Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and if you're hearing that music in the background, it's one of my favorite shows as a young kid back in the early 90s. It was the show 15, or Hillside, as some people called it. And our guest tonight, in my opinion, when you think of that show, her character, Brooke, is the first one you think of all the time. She's done a million things. She's an actor. She's an acting coach. She's a writer. She's a makeup artist and an instructor. The one and only talented Robyn Ross. And Robyn, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Thank you so much, Mike. Can I even live up to that introduction? That was amazing. And I haven't heard that music in decades. That's crazy.
Right. And we're going to talk more about that, Robyn. But let me ask you this. When did you get that first itch? I mean, granted, you were a young kid, but when did you decide that you wanted to be an actress?
Oh, as soon as my parents told me I couldn't be. No, when we were really little, my mom I don't know, we were like her live Barbie dolls. She used to put us in like these, local stores would have little fashion shows or whatever in our community. And she used to put us in it. And I realized that's when I got a lot of great attention from her. So I loved doing these things. And back then, I think I said I wanted to be a nurse or a teacher or whatever. And I think every year she'd ask me, she had this book she'd fill out. And she's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember, I think at 8 or 9 years old, I said an actress. And she pulled me out of everything to do with acting. And the more she fought that, because she's like, no, the more I wanted it. And that led to me skipping out of school when I was in my teenage years and getting an agent, going on auditions. But, as a teenager, you're not farsighted enough to think, well, if I actually book something, it's going to be on TV. And if it's on TV, people will see it. I hadn't thought that far. So one of my first films that I ever booked was a Disney film with Mary Kay Place. And it was called The Girl Who Spelled Freedom. You can find it. It's very rare to find it. And it was about the story of Lin Yan when she came over from Vietnam with the boat people. And then she rose to fame with her spelling bee and she won nationally. And so I was in that. And I remember knowing it was coming on TV. For anyone who's younger, this was before there was, even VHS where you could record a show. And so I knew it was coming on, but I didn't watch it at my house because I didn't want my parents to know I did it. And then all of a sudden, all of these people start calling my parents saying, we just saw Robyn on TV. And I kept going, it's not me. It's not me. And then everyone's like, my parents turned on the TV and of course the credits were coming up and I got grounded.
Yeah. And I think that was like the magical world of Disney. If I remember, I think it came out in 85 or 86. And, that's very like, I always say this, Robyn, those years, especially from 85 to 88, it was really about young kids like that. Really, Disney, especially, they were really catering to that type of audience. I think of Kids Incorporated, which was a popular show, the Mickey Mouse Club and stuff. So you kind of came right at a time where TV was taking off for teenagers, especially. So, I mean, I don't think any good thing could compare to growing up in the 80s. I really don't.
Yeah, it was pretty rad. I'm going to throw around some 80s terms for all of you newbies.
Right.
I don't think I realized what a revolution it was because I also grew up in Canada, for those who don't know, and we didn't have Disney there. So we'd be lucky if one of our local stations would air it. So I think it was more of a kind of revolutionary time for teenage TV in the States than it was for us. But I'll tell you, 15 aired in Canada on one of our local networks because we filmed the first season in Canada. And then after that, we moved to another province in Canada where they filmed You Can't Do That on Television, which ended up moving to Nickelodeon Studios, and so did we in Orlando, Florida. But until that, so Canada aired it. It was under a different name called Hillside for, I guess, rights to play on TV. And then I remember people that was a big deal show in Canada as well.
Yeah. And, some of the best shows I've ever watched are Canadian shows. And I think of Degrassi when I was a kid, that had come on to the scene. And then I'll tell you what, when they did the reboot of Degrassi, The Next Generation, that show lasted like 15 years. And the thing of it is just there were so many good actors that were from Canada that did a great job. And it was really enjoyable to watch anything that was on Canadian TV. I really felt like the writing, the directing, the acting, it was just superb. It really was.
Aw, thank you. I mean, usually I just hear comments about all of our accents or how like the quality or the lighting isn't as good, but I guess it's different because everybody's used to the kind of the TV that their own country puts out. But I mean, we were used to that. So yeah, Degrassi was a phenomenal show.
Yeah, it really was. And Robyn, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were younger as well, you did a lot of musical, regional things. So you were very much into music. Talk about your love for music as well.
Oh my gosh. I guess my favorite times growing up were going to musical theater. I loved watching these shows. I remember seeing the movie Annie. Do you remember with Carol Burnett?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Great
and
movie.
Bernadette Peters. And I watched it and I remember telling my parents that I wished I was an orphan. Doesn't say a lot, but I think it looked like so much fun. And I grew up doing musical theater, and of course this was more regional. And then when I moved to New York City when I was 19, I remember because my dream was to be an Annie. I was 19 years old and I went to audition for one of the orphans, and they said to me, "Oh, can you stay after? We need to have you, audition for an adult role." And break my heart because I had outgrown the kid roles. But I think when I got to New York and I saw the kind of talent that was here for musical theater, and I had never really been formally trained, I just went, I just don't have what it takes to do that. But I think my love for live theater was also because I grew up thinking I was going to become a ballet dancer. And when I was 16, so the harsh world of performance, guys, when I was 16, I was told that I was too short, too hippie, and my chest was too big. So I had to figure out how to not be depressed, but B, to have a life in the arts that I could still express myself and touch people. And it just became acting. And I'm very grateful for it because a lot of the people I know who were dancers suffer at our age from all kinds of ailments and arthritis and whatever. So it was a blessing in disguise.
Right. And let me ask you, Robyn, I know a lot of actors have to do different things to get their foot in the door, mainly doing a lot of commercials. Did you do any commercials as a young kid?
Yeah, I love doing commercials. They were very varied. In fact, it's funny because when I was in my 20s, I did one for Ford Escort when it first came out. And then when I was in my my late 40s, my gosh, I'm giving away my age. But I guess anyone who grew up with the show knows how old I am, considering the name. But when I was in my late 40s, I also did one for Ford Escort. So Ford, for some reason, likes me. And I did some communications ones where the ones I did were always very filmic. They were not really comedic. They were more like short films. And that was wonderful. Helped pay the bills.
Right.
Yeah, I loved it. You are so researched. You are so researched.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That was very nice. But Robyn, 1991 obviously was a big year for you, but not just because of the 15 series, but you also starred on an episode, I believe, of The Adventures of the Black Stallions, right? The New Adventures of the Black Stallion. I remember your character was Liz, I think, or Elizabeth. So just talk about guest starring on there, because again, a lot of times I always say this, when people guest star on something, that really gets people noticing them and it leads to bigger things.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what it led to, because this was a show taken, they went off the movie, The Adventures of the Black Stallion, and then they did this TV show, and it was with Mickey Rooney as well. And here's a little bit of trivia for you. The main guy on the show was Richard Cox, and he was, I think, young Alex was I think Alex was the character, I'm not sure. But he went to the same high school as I did. So that was amazing to actually get cast together. And in fact, I guest starred on 2 shows with him where we played love interests, which is very funny and ironic. But that show led to the beginning of my career, so to speak, because Mickey Rooney said, "I'm doing a show in Chicago. So why don't you come see it? I'll have my, manager arrange that you come out in points. And, it was like a grandfather figure. He was like decades and decades older, but we really hit it off. And I was about to fly out to do that and see his show in Chicago, and I got hit by a car off my bike. And I was down for a while. So he said, after the show, Sugar Babies, that I'm doing in Chicago, I'm going to be doing Will Rogers Follies in New York. Why don't you come to New York and see that show? And so it was something to look forward to and something that got my strength going. And then I came out to New York, fell in love. I don't know if anyone else has felt this, but you go to a place and you feel like, wow, this is where I'm meant to be. This feels like home more than the place I grew up. So I decided to go back to Vancouver. In 3 weeks, I packed up all my stuff and I just moved to New York. And Mickey introduced me to his agent. His agent was like, I'm not taking on this kid, this. So he said, I'll freelance with you just to satisfy Mickey. And the first thing he sent me on was a show called Point Man with Jack Scalia back in the day. And I ended up doing the first show that I auditioned for, which is complete luck, trust me, total luck. And then after that, Robert Malcolm signed me. And he's in his 80s now. He would kill me if he knew I was saying this, but I am still with him 30-something years later. He's still my agent.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great story. That's a great story. So let me ask you, interestingly enough, it usually when you're on a series for the first time, it could be a guest spot, it could be a recurring role, you could be one of the cast members. But let's be honest. I mean, I've said this many times. I would say your character, if she wasn't the top star on that show, she was definitely in the top two. So how did that audition come about for you?
Ooh, that's another great story. Well, the agency I was with at the time in Vancouver refused to send me out to the agent calls. So that meaning they put a breakdown out of the audition to all the agents, and the agents submit the clients that they think would be right for this part or the show. And I knew so many people auditioning for it. And I said to my agent, how come you're not sending me out? And they said, we just don't think you're ready yet. And I said, what? Why? And no matter what, I could not get them to submit me and send me out to the show. So then my mom noticed, it's not like she came around, but she didn't know I was with an agent at this time. So she was like, oh, it's an open call. You're graduating high school. Let's see what happens. So she told me about it. I went to the open call. There was 2,000 people there. And they kept putting us through these rounds where they would go, okay, you step forward, you step forward, you step forward, you step forward. And then they were like, okay, everyone who didn't step forward, you're free to go. Thank you very much. And then they would make us say other lines, or they would make us do improv with each other. And then they would keep eliminating us. And 2 days of these eliminations. And I'm just going to bring up Ryan Reynolds, who played a younger brother on the show. He actually showed up to the open call too, because he didn't even have an agent. He had no thought in his mind about being an actor. He wanted to be a football player in the NFL. But he came with his friends who were wanting to audition. And they were auditioning, and the guys who were the casting, who was putting us through the audition, said to him, okay, say this line. And he said, oh, no, I'm just here with my friends. And they said, say the line. And he's like, no, I'm not auditioning. I'm not an actor. I don't want to do this. And they said, say the line. So he said the line. His friends got nixed. He was pushed forward. And so by the second day, there was probably a good 24 of us left for, I think, like 8 roles. And they actually had me going out for Ashley, which was the sweet girl. And they had Laura Harris, who played Ashley, going out for Brooke. But she just wasn't mean enough. And they said, Robyn, can you be the mean girl? And I was like, ooh, fun. And so I just jumped in, and I saw what she was doing, and it was very naturalistic. And I saw what they wanted me to do was be the absolute 2-dimensional horrible witch. So I just went for it, and the rest is history.
That's a great story. And I'll tell you this, Robyn, the way you played Brooke, I mean, last night I had Allison Argrim on. Of course, she played Nellie on Little House on the Prairie, and you had to play a bad person the entire series. Everybody, that was Laura's rival. And I asked her, was it difficult at times as a young kid because you're playing this person who everybody hates, and even though you're getting a lot of fame and you're on a successful show, people sometimes identify you as that person outside of TV. So, I mean, let me ask you before we talk about Brooke, was it hard playing the character in the beginning, and trying to juggle your real life? Did you ever get like people giving you a hard time for that character?
So we filmed it like kind of like soap opera style. We rehearsed for a long time. We had to learn 13 scripts, put 13 scripts in our head for the season. And then we just filmed them. We did a show a day, and that's how the season went. And so when we did the first season, the only people that knew me were the people that I worked with. So they knew I wasn't mean. I mean, we hung out every day for rehearsals and all that. So I didn't even think it would become an issue until it aired. And I started getting mailed this horrible fan mail telling me how horrible I was. And they hoped the most awful things would happen to me and how I made everybody's life miserable. So I realized for like the next 3 seasons, whenever someone would notice me out on the street, like no matter what kind of day I was having or what I was doing or how I was interrupted, no matter what, I had to be overly friendly because I wanted people to know I'm not really like Brooke. I'm nice. So that was something else. And by the way, you just mentioned Little House on the Prairie. I coach actors now that are on TV shows or ones that are trying for TV shows.
Yeah.
They're doing a reboot, and we're in audition process right now of all the people auditioning for the new Little House on the Prairie.
That's awesome. And we'll talk about that in a sec. But Robyn, as far as 15 went, like I said, I thought your character, Brooke, to me, she really was the heart of the show. And that's nothing against any of the other actors because they were all tremendous. But one of the things about that show that was so unique was you never saw adults in it. You heard about adults. You heard about the coach, Coach Williams. You heard about Brooke's dad. You heard about this person's mother, the principal, but you never saw one adult in that show the entire time. It was just the kids, and it was a soap opera style show. But what was, like I said, unique about that was no parents, no adults. And I mean, I used to laugh sometimes with your character when she would be talking to the character Ashley, because I'd say, how could Ashley not see right through her? I mean, it is obvious that she is being sarcastic. So you really did a great job because you have to make people dislike that character. That's the job of Brooke. She was going to be that antagonist, and you had to make people dislike your character, and you did a phenomenal job with that. Really, like I said, I mean, you were just off the charts when it came to playing Brooke.
Aw, thank you. You know, I just had so much fun because sometimes when you get into a character that's so different from you, it's just fun because you get to be someone else. You get to be mean all day, but you're paid to do it. And then you go home and you're like, I got it all out. So I don't know. It was so much fun. She always had these crazy antics and she always just pushed the envelope that much more. And I always was excited to see what they would have for Brooke next. And yeah, I mean, my sidekick, in the first season, Anuka Okuma. She went by Vanessa Okuma back then, but her name's Anuka. We're still friends.
Played Kelly. Yeah,
she's done really well with her career, and we still talk, and we just had tons of fun together.
I'm glad you brought her up, Robyn, because one of the things that disappointed me about the show was they would, you invest in these characters, and Brooke and Kelly had a falling out in the first season towards the end, and Kelly was also an antagonist like Brooke, but then like she just disappeared and we got no explanation of her. Did it bother you sometimes? Because I feel like you can't disrespect the audience, and I felt like sometimes when they just had these characters disappear without explanation, it's unfair to the audience because they watch this show and you don't find out what happened to them. Did that bother you at times?
Like my little sister Teresa?
Yes. Yeah. And then you had another sister that we never heard about in season 1. She comes in season 2,
Yeah.
Amber, I think it was. Yeah.
I think because I was a teenager at that time, I didn't really give all that kind of thing that much thought. I just knew that I think Anuka left because she was going to do something else, another show or something. I remember it was contractual. And I think Janine left. Janine played my younger sister, Teresa.
Yeah.
Because she was quite young, and I can't remember why she couldn't do it. I think maybe because the next season we were all the way across the country and her mom no one could come to maybe chaperone her. So that was probably the reason. But yeah, I mean, we didn't have our scripts until we were about to just rehearse. So I would see why that would be completely annoying, because if I was into a show now and invested in the character, I would hate that.
Yeah. And Robyn, I always felt like Brooke was your character Brooke was going to get together with the character Dylan or the character Matt. I always felt like Brooke and Matt that was an inevitable relationship that was going to happen. But they never really gave Brooke that boyfriend on the show. Like, I mean, at times she expressed an interest in a guy, but like she never got that, relationship that I felt she deserved. I mean, what was your assessment of playing Brooke? I mean, you did a great job. I loved the character, but if there was one thing that bothered me was finally we were starting to see that Brooke had a conscience, and we understand why she was the way she was, because her father put so much pressure on her. And then like season 4 comes and Brooke, I think, went to Paris. That's the other thing too. I think the series got canceled after season 4. Were you going to come back for season 5? I mean, was that always the plan?
Never the plan. It's amazing. There was some issues at the time. When I got cast, they wanted to cast real 15-year-olds, but for some reason I always like to audition things that are younger than my age. So I auditioned, and back then they don't have computers. They don't have any proof of what age you were. And I guess they believed that I was 15, but I was 18 and I'd already lived on my own. And so I was 3 years older than the other cast members that I played the same age as. And then I was 5 years older than the ones that played like Ryan Reynolds, and 5 years older than him. And so when we went to Universal Studios in Florida, I had to live in a house of all the actors, like with chaperoning, and we had strict restrictions, and it was like boarding school. And I guess at that time it was just kind of like, I'm an adult, can you treat me a little differently? Like, I pay rent and live on my own at home. And we had some creative differences between the creator, John Binkley, and myself. And the ironic thing is, John and I became so close in life, later on in life. He did this interview series of kind of where are they now 20 years later. And then we became close again, and I became close with him and his wife. And they're from Texas, but they used to come and stay in Vancouver a lot. And I would see him in New York, or we would see each other wherever we were. And if I had a film in a film festival, he would come and support it. And unfortunately, he just passed away like a year and a half ago. But up until then, we were very, very close. And he once put in a book that someone wrote on Nickelodeon series, he said the biggest regret he ever had and the biggest mistake he ever made was letting me go. Like, it was a mutual decision, but there was no fighting for let's negotiate more, let's figure out we didn't work it out. And he said it was his biggest regret. And I remember at one point he called me and he apologized, and I apologized, and then we were just super close. And now I'm really close to his daughters. So I mean, it all ended up well, but there was a reason why I left, and it just didn't feel like a healthy environment at the time. And I have no regrets, but I'm just so grateful for the 3 seasons I had.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Robyn, like I said, for a fan like myself, I mean, I enjoyed watching it so much. And I was really rooting for the Brooke character, because I always felt like, yeah, okay, a lot of it she brought on herself, but at the same time, she had an underlying depression that nobody knew about. Like, she really was pressured by her dad. You finally see that. And I was so happy about that, in the sense that finally they gave the audience an idea of why Brooke was the way she was, and you felt sorry for her. And I just always felt like, as an audience, we didn't get the proper send-off for Brooke that we should have got. And Brooke, the character, didn't get a great story ending, because at the end of the day, you look at it this way: Brooke's a kid. So any mistakes she's making as a kid, you got to kind of try to, look at it logically and realize that this won't be Brooke when she's an adult. She will eventually grow up. So that was always disappointing. But the way you played her, like I said, I mean, you made people believe that this person was spiteful, she was mean, and then you also made people believe that she did have a heart. And to me, that's the measure of a great actress.
No, that's so kind. That is so kind. I think the reason there's no send off is because we didn't know until negotiating contracts the following season that I wasn't going to come back. So I think it was planned that I was supposed to be there, and then I wasn't. So that's, I think, what happened. But I really appreciate you saying that. I always knew that people who are mean people aren't mean people just for the sake of being mean for the most part. It's because something else is going on and they either need approval or they have fear or they've been bullied or whatever the reason. And I wanted to make her human in that way. You also saw there was a lot of times where people would get back at Brooke and embarrass her. And I wanted to show that real, like, almost her biggest fear and the death of her was people laughing at her and people making fun of her. And I think you could see then that her meanness was maybe a mask she put on or an armor she put on. It was a facade because she crumbled really easily as soon as people got back at her.
Right. And the thing is, Robyn, what I always like hearing is when the cast members keep in touch. And you mentioned Ryan Reynolds a couple times in this interview, and you kind of, maybe indirectly, but I think it was maybe Valentine's Day, 98 or 99. You introduced him to a guy that would be his co-star on Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. And it's so ironic that things happen like that. But talk about the friendships you made with some of the cast members, because you did have lifelong friendships with some of them.
I really do. I still do. Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't spoken to Ryan in quite a while now. I mean, his life is busy. I would say he has the most successful career out of all of us. I'm so we were all super cheering him on. It's just so ironic that he was the one that was like, I don't want to be an actor. The last time I kind of had some contact with him was when his wife was up in Vancouver doing The Age of Adeline. It was when Blake was there. The only time in my life my daughter ever thought I was cool, because kids don't think their parents are cool. But the makeup artist who did our makeup in 15, the first season, did her makeup on that movie, and then she called me up one day and she said, "Robyn, you're never going to believe it. Ryan's here, Chris is here." Chris Martin is the one that played Dylan.
Yeah,
he actually got a small part on that Age of Adeline. Or I'm saying it wrong, maybe Adeline or something. And so she's like, "You got to come. It's the whole gang." And I said, "Well, I have to pick my daughter up from school." So long story short, I said to my daughter, "Hey, would you want to go? You could meet Blake Lively." And she was into Gossip Girl big time. So she was like, "Yes." And the thing is, I've had her meet so many other stars like Robin Williams and Zac Efron and the guy from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. She could care less. But when it was Blake Lively, it was like, oh. So we get there, but by the time we got there, Chris had been wrapped for the day, so he left. Ryan had already left because he had to look after the kid. And I said, well, I'll still meet Blake. So I took her in and I said, "Hi, Blake. I just wanted to introduce myself. I used to be on a show with your husband." And she goes, "Are you Robyn Ross? Oh my God, those guys were talking about you all day." And then my daughter looks at me like, "Blake Lively knows my mom?" And that was literally the only time she got it. That's it. But so I was in touch with him for years and years and years, but now he's super, super, super busy with tons of kids and family life and career. So awesome. I actually went to the SAG screening of the movie that he wrote, which is, you guys are going to laugh at me because I never watch Marvel movies, but the wolf and like the red guy. Sorry. Yeah. What's that character's name? Deadpool.
What movie again?
Deadpool,
oh, yeah.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
My God, everyone's going to laugh at me. SAG had a screening of it, and he was going to be in attendance. So I went there. But as soon as the movie was over, he was like, shuffled out. And I was like, damn, I wanted to say hi. But I've kept in touch with Anuka, like I said. Arsaman. Arsaman was actually her real name and her
Yeah.
character's name.
And she was a great actress too. Yeah, very talented.
I love her. She left the acting world. She's off. She's lived in so many countries. She's amazing. I've been in touch with Laura over the years, and Janine, I still keep in touch with, who played my younger sister, and Todd Talbot. I love Todd. Todd does so much musical theater, so I always go and support and watch him when I can. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and that's always nice to see, Robyn. I mean, it really is. And that's what I always felt, because you all were like close in age, everybody was a teenager. Again, you were a couple years older, that you're going to be close because you're with each other a lot throughout the days. And like anything else, I mean, sometimes you're going to get along with each other. Sometimes you're going to fight with each other at that age, but that bond is there forever. So it's always nice to see when castmates, even if they were only on a few seasons with each other, they stay in touch, because you hate to see where you do a show with somebody for 3 or 4 years, then you never see them again.
I know. I honestly loved the experience. I loved everybody. There was nobody on the cast that I didn't love. I think John had a really good vision for who he chose. A lot of the actors, because they did it as children, didn't decide to continue acting. There's a handful of us that did, and I would be thrilled. I would be so thrilled to see any of them. I just actually signed with another kind of agent that does, apparently these 90s cons are becoming big again.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I just signed with someone who reached out to my agent and said, would Robyn be wanting to do these? And I was like, whoa, yes! We used to do mall tours with the Saved by the Bell people. So if I could see Tiffany, I would love to see Tiffany again, because we all live in different cities. We lose touch. I'm in New York now. They're in LA. And, the 90210 people, I did get to do a couple of roles with Jason Priestley since, but, that was a big time back then when we were all doing these kinds of teen shows. So it would be so great to see these people again. So if you know about 90s cons coming to your city, you should go. It's so much fun.
And I think one of the things too, Robyn, and they did it like in a very innocent way, which was important because you don't want to push that envelope, is the relationships that they had with the cast members on the show, like Matt and Ashley. That was the big thing. They were dating. As teenagers who are watching this, they fall in love at their teenage years. They start to get crushes and they want to date and stuff like that. So when they're watching shows like this, they almost could identify with some of the things that are going on, because they might be having a fight with their girlfriend or their boyfriend, but it's just being kids and having their innocence and not worrying about real life yet. And that's real. And to them, stuff that was stressful was passing their geometry test, or Matt didn't call Ashley last night like he promised. So I really felt like
divorce. That was like the big theme, or his drinking.
Yes, his drinking, which, it goes to show that it doesn't matter what age you are. If you get started and you're having trouble with it, it was something they really touched on. And you saw like it made the character Matt angry. And then when he was done with his drinking, boy, what a likable character he was. He did so many great things after that had happened. I mean, he was a friend really to everybody. So, I mean, I just always felt like they taught you life lessons on that show as well.
They really did. And whereas some of the other shows got more into like the liberation of teens and like talking about sex and that kind of thing, it was really nice that this was still kind of a much more innocent show. Yeah, they touched on some things, but I think the things they touched on were really true to like 12, 13, 14-year-old demographic of, the 80s was a time, this show started in the early 90s, but I think it was in the 80s when I started hearing about people's parents getting divorced, because when I grew up in the 70s, it was very rare to hear of any divorce. So I think like touching on things like that, or school bullying or things, I think it was a great show when you were a tween to watch, to kind of grow up and know that you're not the only one suffering through these things. Right.
Robyn, 2 shows that I really enjoyed you in. One was just you used your voice, and I brought that up to you off the air, was Mega Man. And you did about, I would say 27, 28 episodes of that. And I always say that voiceover work, while it looks easy because you don't have to dress up and like, put makeup on or anything like that. You still have to make people believe in that character that you're voicing. And you did a tremendous job with that. You proved you could be a voiceover actress. And then I really enjoyed your character, even though she was only on like maybe 5 episodes. I love your character, Marnie, on the L Word. I thought you were just great in that. Talk about those 2 shows because they were tremendous that you were in.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to give all the credit to Terry Klassen, who is the director of Mega Man, because we can come up and do all these kinds of wacky, crazy things, but his direction kind of gives us boundaries to create our character within. And at that time, I was also very lucky because that was my first big voiceover job that I booked. And then he also let me do every other female voice that was in it. So it was me and a whole bunch of guys.
Yeah.
And it was a fun, wild, crazy time. And I enjoyed it so much. And then I ended up moving to New York. So a girl named Kathy Westluck, who does tons of voice, she ended up taking over my character after that. But that was so much fun. But I owe all of that to the director. And then when it came to the L Word, what a blessing of a role that was. What an important show that was when that came out. We were like the 3 baby dykes, like my group of girls that lived with Shane. Wonderful, wonderful girls. We had so much fun, and it was a pretty revolutionary show. So I feel very lucky to have been a part of that. And then they just did a reboot recently.
Yeah. And that was a very popular show. It really was.
Yeah. I really loved it. And thank you for saying that, because I wanted to show people, still that was at the time when, Ellen had just came out and all those things. And, I had some friends that were gay women, but everyone kind of knew about gay guys, but, gay women, they always had this vision in their head. And I wanted them to know that they can come in all different shapes and sizes, and femme and not femme and whatever. And, I think it was like really educational for people, but I had so much fun with her because my character just tried way too hard to fit in at that point. So that was, I wasn't a bitch, so that was good.
And the other thing is, Robyn, your voice was also in a video game. I mean, Dead Rising, you got to be in a video game. That's got to be pretty cool when your voice is being used in something like that. So, I mean, it just seems like to me that you were willing to try anything, be a writer, be an acting coach, which I'm going to talk about in a second, an actress. I mean, you wanted to do anything you possibly could, and you do all of it so well. It's almost like you do it effortlessly the way you do it. So it just shows that you're willing to put that work ethic in to be the best you could be.
Mike, I need to replay this every time I have those down days, because I need you as my hype man. This is amazing. I think, to be honest with you, I appreciate all your accolades, but it came out of necessity. I was determined to show my parents, who wanted me to become a doctor or a lawyer or something they could, be proud about. I had to prove to them that I could make my living as an actress. And I guess I spent all those formative years just doing anything I could to make a living doing it. Don't think that I didn't have side jobs, of course, waitressing or doing toy fairs or hostessing things or, car shows or anything I could just to make a living at it. And that all is part of it and is fun. But I think I did everything out of necessity and then learned to love it all. So I just wanted to be creative and learn to express myself in any creative means possible. So that's where that came from.
Well, that's a cool story. And I'll tell you what, one thing you didn't tell me yet, and I'm curious to know, did your parents say to you, you know what, we were wrong and you were right? Because you proved them wrong because you were determined to do this. Did they ever say, you know what, we apologize, Robyn, you proved us wrong?
They did.
They did. So that's good, and you give them credit, because that's not an easy thing to do, because you want the best for your kids and you think your intentions are good, and theirs were. They definitely were, because it's a hard business. So the fact that they were willing to admit that, they were wrong about you, that says a lot about them as parents.
They really, really did. They love looking at my auditions now. So to this day, every time I do auditions, I make sure I send them to my agent as well as my parents, because they're the first to watch them. They're so excited. They love that I've found ways. Like, I think they were just worried that either I'd end up, in their minds, all actors ended up having terrible relationships, getting in car accidents and dying, or having drug issues, right? So that I think in the end of the day, that was their fear. Or how is she going to sustain herself financially? How is she going to make a go of it? It's such a difficult industry. And I think when they saw that I did, and that I raised my daughter, in essence, literally, I gave them the daughter that they always wanted. My daughter did everything by the book. She, went to university. She got her master's degree. She has a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Conservative type, predictable job. And they're so proud of her. And they're like, wow, you could do that as a mom and as an actor, and you still raise this kid. So yeah, now they don't question anything I say or do. It took a long time to get to that. And I have to say something funny. The minute I got their approval on what I did as a career was the time I had to reevaluate if I wanted to do it, because I didn't have the drive anymore to prove them wrong. So there was a period in time where I took about 6 years off and went, do I even like this? Do I want to get rejected every single day? Do I want to, if I spent this many hours, in the book, The Outliers, they say if you spend 10,000 hours, you are like completely proficient at what you do. You're a master at what you do. Yeah. I'm like 10,000. I've done 20, 30,000. I don't even know how many thousand. And if I was in any other job, I would be a CEO. But I'm still trying to make ends meet. Some years are good years, some years are not good years, and all reality of it. But then I realized when I tried other things that I kept missing it and kept wanting to come back. And I'm like, I don't think we choose the arts. I think the arts choose us, because if there was anything else that I was just as happy doing, I would be doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Robyn, you were on probably 4 or 5 episodes of Riverdale, and I wanted to ask you this because you brought up 90210 before, and Luke Perry, of course, was on that series, and then he tragically died unexpectedly. Did you get to know Luke at all during that time, those few episodes?
It was so funny because all the parents on the show kind of hung out together, and then all the kids on the show hung out together, and it was just so weird being all of a sudden a parent on a teen series, because it just felt like, where did those 20 years go? How did I get here already? So he was so kind, and yeah, we did speak. I mean, I didn't have tons of scenes every time I filmed, so I was just there for the few hours, but anytime I had any interaction with him, he was absolutely lovely. And I just feel like, why is it always the good people? But another thing on that is that Skeet Ulrich and I, Skeet, who played Jughead's dad, we used to hang out back in the day in New York together. And there was even a period of time where I can't remember, something happened to his apartment, and my boyfriend at the time, who's a producer now, but was an actor back then, he was in the movie Jacklight with me, said to him, oh, you can stay at my girlfriend's house. So there was a night that Skeet Ulrich stayed at my place in New York. And when I met him, he's like, hi. I'm like, we know each other. You stayed the night at my place one time. And he was like, what? And I'm like, not in that way. Yeah.
So Robyn, I always kind of compare acting coaches similar to, say a baseball scout who has their eye on a player, and they give information to the team and say, listen, you might want to consider drafting this person. He is really good. His timing is good, everything. And as an acting coach, what you're doing, what you've done for so many years now, it has to be rewarding, because when you see people that you coached, that you taught, that you helped, and you see them make it big, I mean, that's got to make you even prouder of that than actually being a successful actress. And think about, like, you've been doing this all over the place: Los Angeles, New York City, Vancouver, Calgary, Utah, Newfoundland. I mean, you're all over the place teaching these aspiring actors. I mean, talk to me about being an acting coach and how rewarding it's been.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think I came to this because I've been teaching for quite a few years, I think more than 20 now. And that became my side job after that and makeup artistry, which we'll talk about after. But, you know, what happened is during COVID, somebody said, well, what am I going to do? I feel like if I'm going to lose, you know, my sharpness as an actor, it's like any muscle. If you don't keep working it out, you're going to lose it. So they said, would you be willing to work with me one-on-one? And then as soon as they said it, they said to their friend, oh, Robyn's will work with you on Zoom one-on-one. And I think what happened is all of a sudden, this whole thing just sprang out of nowhere. And I just went, I love this. I love taking what they're doing and being able to find the little things to just do a little adjustment, which all of a sudden takes their acting to a whole new level. And it just went like wildfire after that. And then a couple of my clients that were like, I don't know why I'm getting so close, but I'm not booking. I just said, let's just start working together. Let's see what happens. And then they would book a series. And then other people would come to me. And now if actors are on series, I work with them with their script every day to coach them to you know, make sure that they do the best they can on their show. Or a lot of the clients I have ended up getting series that we've worked together on, or amazing plays on Broadway or whatever. And I love it. And so what they do is when they book the role, they usually Zoom call me and I see their name and I see it's a Zoom and I'm like, oh my goodness. And then they call me and they're like, I booked it. And like, we have this joy together. And I swear I get the exact same feeling that I get when I hear that I book something. So now it's like I'm living vicariously through all of them, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't put a price tag on that, Robyn. I mean, again, you want to make money, no doubt about it. I mean, you can't just do this business and not come out with something. But with that said, doing things like this, seeing your students, because that's what they were before they made it big, and seeing them achieve their goals and get, you know, auditions, get parts that they get. I mean, that has to just put the biggest smile on your face, especially like you said, when you get that Zoom call.
It's the best feeling in the world. It's as good as booking. Yeah.
And let me ask you, Robyn, take us through it. Say it's the first class, you get a new class in and they're in an acting class. What is the message what is the mission statement that you send to them when they get in the class that day? What do you tell them that, you know, I don't know how many classes you have. I don't know how many months it goes, but what do you tell them that first day? Like, how do you break it down for them?
I basically said this: if you have a love, or you think you have a love, or you have a curiosity, see where it takes you. And if you feel like it's something that is coming from within, something that you have to do and you have to explore, keep doing it. But if there's anything else that you could possibly be happy doing, like I just said before, do it. Because I'm just like, you are signing yourself up for a life of masochism. But the joy that you get from your successes, or from giving other people joy from the roles you do, or I don't know, just creatively when you work on creative projects with people, the joy that you get far outnumbers like the pain, but you'll never get through it if it's not something that you just absolutely feel compelled to do.
Right.
It's a hard industry, and I don't want anybody to think anything else, because when they say, I knew a guy who was a restaurateur, he was a very, very successful restaurateur, and he said, I really want to be an actor. And I said, that's great. Just don't give up the restaurant. And he said, no, it's okay. Because if I just make as much, I don't need to be rich and famous. If I just make as much as I can just, you know, yearly that I have in my restaurant, I'll be happy. And I went, probably 1 in every 5,000 people would actually make how much you make in the restaurant a year. I said, if you're good making what you make as a server in one night for a year, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's great advice. It really is. Now, let me ask you this, Robyn, because a couple of the actors I've had on, and I've asked them when they've taken acting classes, they've had instructors who, if they saw them yawning, they would throw them out of the class. They'd be like, up, leave. You're not interested. How are you as an instructor? Are you like I would be willing to bet you're a very patient instructor. You're not going to like chastise anybody, but when you do see things like that, Do you ever critique them in class like that and say, listen, you know, you got to show that you're a little more interested than you are?
You know what's so funny is I'm tough when I push, because if I see that they can get to that next level, I will push them and push them and push them. It's just like the trainer at the gym going, come on, you can do it. 5 more reps, 5 more, 5 more. I'm like, okay, I want you to do it again. This time I want you to be more aware. I want you to listen. I don't see you listening. So I'll do that. And I think because I'm passionate about it, sometimes people think that I'm scary, but I always end the class saying, guys, I am passionate because I love what I'm doing and I love watching you succeed. So this is literally coming from my heart. Please, if I'm pushing you and it's too much, let me know and I'll back down. But know it's coming from a place of love. Honestly, that's it. If somebody is on their phone, because that seems to be the big problem these days, I'll be in the middle of instructing and I'll see someone on their phone. I just do this. And eventually they go, and I go, and they go, and that's it. That's how I get what I need. You just
less is more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Robyn, I really believe for this reason, and there's so many reasons, but for this reason alone, why acting classes are so important, why acting coaches are so important, because many times when I'm watching TV, especially I was a big fan in the 80s and 90s watching stuff. I'll take the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, for example. I don't know how they kept a straight face doing their scenes, but I'd be willing to bet that that's why you need acting lessons and you need acting coaches, because you have to be able to not make, start laughing when somebody's doing a scene that's funny, or, even an important scene when you're screaming at each other, because like anything else, you have to be on your A game when you're doing this stuff.
You are so right. I will say this is where TV or film is easier than theater, because in TV and film, for some reason, if you do break out laughing, and it's very hard to be around, like I'm certain that Will Ferrell would be almost impossible, because I know him and Ryan make each other like crack up. There'd be certain people that would be impossible to be around and not lose it at least a couple times in your life or career. Yeah. But on stage, you can't. If you're in a very serious scene, or you have to get something across, or you're fighting for an objective from somebody in an argument, you can't laugh. It will ruin the reality for everybody watching. And that's why live is so difficult. That is why you have to hone your craft. And there are many, many exercises for concentration and for staying in your character. Definitely.
Right. Robyn, you kind of touched on this briefly in the beginning of the interview, that you have some of your students that are in the process of auditioning for the new Little House on the Prairie, which I think, I'm so curious to see how they're going to do this. I think it was long overdue, but just talk about that a little bit, because again, I mean, if you could get some of them cast on there, that to you, again, is another feather, not only in their cap, but your cap as well, because you're teaching them, you're coaching them. And if that were to happen, I would say that's got to be something that it's just another example of how proud you would be of your students. And you already are, but that would just take it.
The hard thing is I had so many of my clients going out for Laura Ingalls or Mary, and I want all of them to get it. And they can't all get it. And they all gave amazing auditions. They were all very different. But and I'm not going to direct them and coach them the same way. They all have their own essence, and they all bring something different to the character, and they all look different. So I will just make them do the best performance they personally can do. And then whatever the producers are looking for is what they're looking for. But it's so hard because I don't want to pit them against each other. And I just want all of them to book something, But it's going to be filming in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is above North Dakota, and very cold, very prairie, very good luck to everybody. In the summers, they're going to get bit with mosquitoes until they're like, they have no blood left. And then in the winter, they will die of cold. But I'm very excited to see this show. It was one of my favorite shows as a kid.
Yeah, it really was. And it taught you so many life lessons. And what I said to I had both Dean Butler and Allison on last night. Dean, of course, played Almenzo, Laura's husband. And I had touched on how there were so many serious moments in those shows. And sometimes, as a viewer, as an audience, you kind of, when an episode ended, you kind of cried after it because it wasn't always happy. There were some sad moments. I think of Charles.
The dog died.
Yeah. Oh, that was terrible.
Heartbreaking.
So, yeah. So, I mean, like, that's what that show taught you, and it taught you how they had to live back then. I mean, it was difficult to live back then. And that's really what they teach you is how what was hard to live, there was no electricity, all that stuff. They somehow lived a normal life for the most part, and they got through it. And that's why that show was so invaluable to TV, because it taught you so many of those life lessons.
Yeah, just think about how weird it will be for kids to watch now. I mean, when we watched it, we were watching on TV thinking they didn't even have TV back then. They didn't even have phones back then. Yeah. And now imagine kids thinking they didn't have TV or phones, but they didn't have computers. They didn't have cell phones. It would be really weird to imagine life like that. I think it's great for those kids to go back and see that. See how much fun you could just have outdoors, running free,
Oh, I know. It's unbelievable when you think about it. Robyn, again, like I said, you're multi-talented, you do everything. And what people don't realize is what a makeup artist you are. And that's something that you really enjoy, you have a passion for. So talk about that a little bit. And you've been doing that for quite a few years now, correct?
Oh, I've been doing that since I was about 19. And I owe that to Monica Hupert, who was the makeup artist for 15. Ironically, 15 was her first show as a makeup artist. And flash forward 35 years later, and she's like the head of the department of the union for makeup artists in the film industry. But, I was so interested in what she would do and how she would do special effects makeup or makeup on all of us to make us look different or cover up her zits or bags or whatever. And I said to her, how do you do this? How do you do that? And she said, well, when you're on hiatus, why don't you go take a course? It was probably her way of saying, just go learn it yourself. Stop asking. And so I did. And then, sometimes when you go through a lot of rejection in film, just so everybody knows what what this life is really like. After I got off, after 15 was done for me, I didn't book another role for 2 years.
Right.
So, like I said, it's a non-linear type of career where you could be going like this and you're like, oh my gosh, I've made it. I'm shooting for the stars, and then not work for another 2-3 years. A good friend of mine, Cody Kearsley, who was Moose on Riverdale. He was one of the leads on Daybreak, was a show that was out for one season. And now he was just cast on Virgin River. So he's going to be in a lot of Virgin River coming up. He didn't work for 3 years after Daybreak, and he was a lead on that show. So This is the reality. But long story short, when I decided to take a break from acting, which was a good 6 years, I decided to pursue makeup. It was a creative outlet. I found it enjoyable. I used to do my grandmother, my mom, my friends. I used to do everybody's makeup. They'd always come to me. And then I decided to do it professionally and get serious about it. And I have just as much a love for that as I do for acting. It's just, I think I just need to be creative, because now instead of all that, it's writing. And we just got one of our scripts optioned. So coming to a Hallmark channel near you sometime, hopefully in the next year, we did a funny holiday rom-com we wrote. My writing partner and I, who's also an actor.
And let me ask you, Robyn, I would bet when you could put something on pen and paper that you wrote and you're telling the story, that's got to be so enjoyable as well. And you probably get so into it, and then you're changing it and, tweaking it a little bit and things like that. But the writing side of it has to be just as invaluable to you as the acting side of it is.
Sometimes I'm getting more enjoyment because it's new. I honestly didn't think I could ever write. I actually didn't honestly think I could do anything other than act in the film industry. And, I just was seeing to be honest, it was because a friend of mine who also teaches at the school I teach at, he had done a Hanukkah Hallmark movie, and him and I are both Jewish actually, and they were done so terribly, and also all the information was wrong. And I said to him, no offense, but that movie was awful. And he goes, I know. I said, we should write one. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, seriously? And he goes, yeah, let's do it. And so we took a year and a half to get it right, to learn. We had people look over it and read us and give us tons of notes, and we'd go back, and I think we're like 5 or 6 drafts in, and we just got it optioned. And so it's like a Hanukkah Christmas Hallmark movie, but hopefully done right, and very heavily influenced from the movies of the late 80s and the early 90s. Just so you know, lots of references to those movies. And we would act out our scenes, we'd write them, and we'd say, let's hear how it sounds. So we'd act them out, and we're like, oh, we need to change this, we need to change this, we need to change this. But we'd have so much fun doing it. We were just like, this is awesome. So I love writing. It scares me. That's also the greatest thing about it. It scares me, and it's good to do things that make you scared when you're older. And I hope to keep writing. I loved it.
And I'll tell you what, Robyn, I'm sure you could write a book. I'm sure you could write like a few continuations, and I would love to see you someday. And this is a hint, is to write about Brooke being an adult and writing about her childhood. And I think, 15 fans would love to see what became of Brooke after 1993. What did she do? This and that. So that's a little hint. That may be something you do someday, not anytime soon, but someday. And I hope that that's something you'll consider, because I think that would be really
it's cool. So crazy. John Binkley's daughter and I were in conversations for a good half a year about doing a reboot.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, it would be a little bit of a different format. It would probably be like a 24-minute show. And we were just trying to figure out what to do, because if we were going to bring the characters back, I mean, they didn't have adults in the show, so that would maybe be different. So it might be our lives now, and we'd call it, 50.
That's a pretty good title, though. That really is.
50. But we were talking about it. We were rolling it around, and we were mostly doing it before John passed. But, maybe if you're saying that, maybe I should get in touch with her and say, let's see how much of a desire there is out there for people to watch that, because I think a lot of them have done reboots. 90210 did a reboot. It wasn't very successful.
Yeah.
I know that Malcolm in the Middle is doing a reboot.
I think the iCarly did. There are a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they do.
Obviously, obviously the Connors. I mean, that reboot was very successful. It lasted 7 years. Their original show lasted 9. So I mean, that reboot. The thing I look at it is this, Robyn. You were talking about those 90s cons that so many people do. I guarantee you, if your cast were booked tomorrow somewhere, whether it was Connecticut, whether it was California, wherever it might be, Vancouver, you would be overwhelmed by the amount of people that would show up for that, because I don't think people realize, actors especially, the impact that their shows had on fans, because to this day, fans, go out of their way. A movie like The Monster Squad, it didn't do good in the box office, but guess what? It's got a cult following. Everybody's there. And I know if the 15 cast got together, oh my God, there'd be like a line outside the door. There really would be.
So good to know. Okay. All right. Well, food for thought. Maybe that'll be the next thing you write.
Right. So, Robyn, let me ask you this before we go. What has been, if you could pick one thing in your career, what has been the most, I don't want to say rewarding, but maybe the most invaluable thing that you've gotten out of your career?
Whew. Oh my gosh. I think this could take me days to actually think of the right answer. So I'm going to try and not be the perfectionist and just, I guess hearing you talk about how the way the work I did touched your life, I I think hearing stories about how whatever show I did at what point and how the person identified with it and how it helped them maybe through a hard time or made them laugh, or I think that, as well as now watching the generations below me come up and also do the same thing. I guess I've always been a person that likes to be in service of others. Like that's my love language, to do, to feed, to whatever. And I think if I can bring in other people joy in even the littlest way, then it's all worth it. It's all worth it. I think that's my final answer.
That's a great answer. And Robyn, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but Prime Video has all 4 seasons of 15 on now, which is great for the fans that watched this when it was on the air. I think it was long overdue, and it's so good to see it. And it's funny, the other day I'm watching an episode because, sometimes you could forget an episode here and there. And I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. And I had forgot too, like how in the first season, Brooke's hair was longer than the second season. It was very short. And it's just amazing, like how this happens with every actor that's a kid. They go from one season looking so young, and then the next year they just like got taller. They got older in a matter of a summer. I mean, it's crazy. And that's what fans always got to see, is they got to watch people like yourself grow up on this show. And
did you think second season I looked younger or older than first season?
First season, you looked like a young kid, but then in the second season, it was like, oh my God, her voice changed a little bit. She got older looking. It was amazing. Same thing with Chris, who played Dylan. I mean, I couldn't even believe like how tall he had gotten in one season. I mean, but that's what fans get to see more than anything else. They get to see you guys as kids and watch you grow up. And a lot of times they're kids and they don't realize that they're growing up too. And they're getting older looking in after a summer. So, I mean, that to me is something that you should be proud of more than anything else, is that that group of audience. Yeah. That group of audience that got to see you and your cast members, in a lot of ways, they felt like they knew you, even though they didn't.
Yeah, it's so hard because you always take one, or even now with a lot of Netflix shows, they take almost 2 years before it's back on the screen again. So, I mean, they're playing it like no time has passed in between, but like people are all of a sudden a completely different height, different age. They're, like you said, their voice drops, all these things. It's very difficult with kids to do these shows that go on forever with that much time in between. But it's so funny that you said something about the hair in the season, because another teen show, someone just sent this to me the other day. If you can see.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that funny? They're comparing me to this. I think he's from Stranger Things, but it's true. We had the same haircut. I guess it's come back in style now, because that was an awful time to remember that haircut.
And you know what's funny too, Robyn? I didn't ask this, but I might as well since you brought it up. I bet a lot of the wardrobes that you had to wear on that show and how you had to have your hair and things like that, I bet a lot of times you said to yourself, God, this is nothing I would ever wear. Is that true?
When we were doing the show?
Yeah. Like, how they have you in different, like, I know like a good example, when I had one of the cast members, Kids Incorporated on, they were like, oh, those costumes they had us wear for our concerts. I was like, oh my God, these are so cheesy, stuff like that. Did you ever like the wardrobes?
You have to remember, I played the rich girl, so I loved my clothes. Well, but there's been tons of shows where I don't. Trust me, there's tons of shows where I'm like, okay, it's serving the character, I'll do it. But no, I loved my clothes on 15, and I actually got to keep some of them, and I still have them.
Oh, wow.
It kind of came back around about 4 years ago. So I just, brought out a jacket here and there. Everyone was like, cool jacket. It's so vintage. And I'm like, I guess it is vintage now. So I'm vintage.
That's a great story. But Robyn, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes today. It was a real honor for me. But I want to congratulate you, not just on 15, which to me is an iconic teen series that so many fans love. And I do love the show. But what really stands out to me the most about you is who you are as the teacher and the coach, because you have like helped so many, like I said, aspiring actors go out there, and any of them that are working right now, it's a direct result of the work you put in to help them be better actors, to help them see what the business is like, show them the way. And doing that, listen, in life, I don't think any of us ever want to leave this world without making a difference. And by doing that and doing that alone, if you did nothing else in your whole life, doing that alone, and of course, being a mother, you've made a difference and been very impactful. And you should be very proud of that. And I really do applaud you for that.
I really thank you. That really means so much to me, as well as the fact that I always wanted more than one child. I only ended up in life with one child, which I'm so grateful for. But I always say that all my students, no matter if they're, well, the youngest I kind of work with is 9, and then they go all the way up until their 60s and 70s, but they've all become, I don't care how old you are, once I'm working with you and I have you under my wing and I'm showing you the way to whatever passion you have for this craft, I feel like you are my extended family and my other children. So it's been more fulfilling and means more to me, I'm sure, than I could ever mean to anyone else. And that I've been so fortunate to have that. So thank you. And if anybody's watching this and you haven't lived your dream and you feel like you have it in you to want to, you can reach out to me on Instagram. I don't, how did you get my email? Just through IMDb?
On Instagram. I went on Instagram and it had it up there. Yep.
Yeah, Instagram. So please, I mean, if you want to discuss like the business or how your kid could get in or whatever, feel free to reach out.
Well, that's awesome. And folks, I would really encourage that. And I'll just say this as we end right here. If there was one thing I could say about Robyn that really tells you who she is, not just as an actress, not just as a writer, a makeup artist, a coach, a person, I would say this: in life, you have to work to get things the way you want them. And you're not always going to succeed at them, but that's okay as long as you're willing to try. Well, I think Robyn's motto is success isn't an elevator. You have to climb stair by stair. And she's climbed several stairs in her life. And it's safe to say she's reached the top step. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone. All right, perfect.